The gap I see all the time is, for example, between advertising and profitability. It is especially true if you are a seller that where you have a team managing ads. It could be an internal team or an agency that is a little bit disconnected from the operational aspect of the business. Your item level profitability does not align with your ad spend, right? So unless you bring these together in a view, you're not going to know it. So I think profitability by product is another example that you want to track on a very regular basis. So these are all things that just explain what happened.
Welcome to the Ecom Breakthrough Podcast. Are you ready to unlock the full potential and growth in your business? You've already crossed 7 figures in sales, but the challenge is knowing how to take your business to the next level. Join Josh Hadley, an 8-figure ecom business owner and investor, as he interviews highly successful business owners. Get ready, because you're going to learn specific actions you can take today to help your business reach its full potential and leave a lasting impact on the world.
Welcome to the Ecom Breakthrough Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Hadley, where I interview the top business leaders in e-commerce. Past guests include Kevin King, Aaron Cordovez, and Michael E. Gerber, author of The E-Myth. Today, I am speaking with Srinath Reddy, the founder and CEO of IntentWise, and we are going to be talking a lot about how you can use data that Amazon and Walmart and all the marketplaces are giving you in order to create a competitive advantage and moat around your business. This episode is brought to you by Ecom Breakthrough, where I specialize in investing in and scaling 7-figure companies to 8 figures and beyond. If you're an ambitious e-commerce entrepreneur looking for a partner who can help take your business to the next level, my team and I bring hands-on experience, strategic insights, and the resources needed to fuel your growth. So if you or someone you know is ready to scale or looking for an investment partner, reach out to me directly at josh@ecombreakthrough.com. That's ecom with 2 M's, and let's turn your dreams into reality. But today I am super excited to introduce you all to Srinath Reddy. Srinath is the founder and CEO of a technology company called IntentWise. As the likes of Amazon and Walmart share more data than ever before at IntentWise, their goal is to help brands and agencies make the most of all of this data. So with that introduction, welcome to the show, Srinath.
Josh, thank you for having me.
I'm excited to have you on. Now, I'm not a data nerd by any means. Like if one of my favorite like profile or like personality assessments is the Colby Index. Data could not be more lower than it probably is right now. I think it's probably like a 1, 2. It's like, just give me the gist. Like, I don't want to dive in. But I've got a strong member of my team that's like a 9 or a 10 in data. So him and I jive really, really well together. So selfishly, I'm really excited for this podcast to then turn it over to him and say, pull this apart and how do we implement this in our business? So I'm looking forward to this.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, absolutely. I swing between, the nerd levels of data and all the way back up on a regular basis. So we'll have a good conversation.
This will be great. All right. So Srinath, I love, before we hit the record button on this podcast, you mentioned that, it was just maybe 24 months ago where we didn't have as much data as we have now. And you're a strong believer that people that use the data that Amazon is giving them right now can be a massive competitive advantage, especially as we're talking to listeners that want to grow to 8 figures and beyond. Yep. So talk to me more about that, Srinath. Like, why do you feel like data is important? Why do you feel like that can become a competitive advantage?
No, absolutely. So I think a little bit of historic background on me, right? So before starting this business, I used to run the data teams and online marketing teams at a company called Orbitz, the online travel company, which then got bought by Expedia, right? So in that role, I have battle scars from dealing with massive amounts of data. It's a consumer internet site with 20 million people. So I lived the story of what do you do with data? How do you really leverage it? All the challenges it comes with to operate and grow a business, right? So that's just the background in which I have started and built this business. What has happened in this space? First of all, if you're a seller that has reached a certain scale, the basics of having a compelling differentiated product that appeals to some portion of the customer segment is, you've checked that box already, right? Now, how do you grow? How do you differentiate? What has happened in support of that, I would say, over the last, like you said, last 24 months, is if you look at, dial forward, actually, I'll go back 3 years, right? Dial back 3 years, you had sponsored ads, you had DSP, and if you're a seller, you had an MWS API, and if you're a vendor, you had no API, right? So that was the state of the universe. If you look at it now, ads and DSP have remained, and they've continued to expand, and they have all kinds of levers that are now part of those products. But Amazon has rapidly expanded what I call their measurement footprint or the data footprint. And to give you very specific examples, we used to have selling partner MWS API that has now changed to what's called selling partner API. They've really leveled up the ability to access the data as well as the amount of data that you can get from that API. Right? You always had your ads data and sponsored ads and DSP data, but now you have hourly data on both advertising as well as retail. That's new, right? And the biggest innovation they've done on the data side is, you've heard the term Amazon Marketing Cloud, right? Now Amazon talks about it a lot. The way it's unique and different is, for the first time, you have data at a very granular level on every shopper, right? Josh, if you saw sponsored ads, clicked on an ad the next day, and then 3 days later came back and bought, or maybe 3 days later you added it to a wish list, and a week later you came back and bought, every one of those events is tracked in Amazon Marketing Cloud, and you have a unique ID associated with you. It's called user ID, right? So that's Amazon Marketing Cloud for you. Why is that helpful? Well, you can start to answer questions you could not answer before, right? Hey, what is the lifetime value on this customer? How are multiple campaigns interacting with each other? And there's a number of use cases we can dig into. My point being, all this put together, it is giving you access to data that can answer super important critical questions that you couldn't answer before, right? And we'll get into what those are. But if you are someone thinking about growth, what are you doing all day? You're asking important questions, right? How do I do this? How do I do that? How did my Prime Day go? Did I spend my money the right way on Prime Day? These are all questions you're asking. And these data sets, these expanding data sets, are your pathway to getting those critical answers and making those moves as a business that can help you, drive growth. And also, it's not going to be easy, which also makes it a competitive differentiator, right? You can't just think that I want to do this and it happens. You got to commit and invest over a little bit of time to make it happen. And hence, I think it really can be a differentiator.
Awesome. Srinath, so here's what I think most entrepreneurs probably listening to this, they're like, oh my goodness, like more data. Like I don't love data.
Yeah.
So how do I do this, and what's the value of this data? And, initially before we hit the record button, you gave kind of like 3 really good questions that we should be considering. But I'm curious, Srinath, like what questions should sellers be asking and trying to find the answers to of the data that is going to make the biggest impact in their business?
Great point. And I actually think it's daunting to sit and even listen to me talk about all this data. Okay, what am I going to do? I don't have time to do my basics. Where am I going to find time to do this? I think it's a valid reaction. I actually think that as much as there's tons and tons of data and you can get into the weeds on where it's coming from and all that, that's not even the starting point. I'll make the starting point extremely simple, right? Which is, if you're a business that is wanting to drive growth, it is important to have what I call a roadmap of questions you want to answer, right? And I'll give you specific examples. And roadmap is a fancy word, but I just say, like, do you have a one-pager with the 10 questions you're trying to answer that you think will change the trajectory of the business, or you think will reduce anxiety, or you think will get you some time back, right? It's just a list of questions. And if you don't have one today, I would sit down for 30 minutes, bring some important team members together, construct one. But what are these questions? I've seen a lot of sellers and agencies, right, over the last 4 to 5 years to me, it boils down to three simple buckets. The first bucket is an operational bucket where you're just trying to understand what happened to the business yesterday, last week, last month, year over year. Okay. As crazy as this sounds, this in itself is not easy for a lot of people. A lot of time goes into it, and there's always a lot of gaps. And by the way, I'm going to get very specific in terms of examples as well. That's bucket number one. Bucket number two is diagnostics. Let's just assume that something happened to the business. Your top seller, which is doing phenomenal for the first 6 months of the year, suddenly started to tank. Why did it happen? Right? That to me is diagnostics. One of the things you can tell about like the health of the business is when such a thing happens. Do they have a set process to go figure it out, or does everybody lose it and they're running around with like chicken with their head cut off? And I've been in both environments, not just in this business, but in my previous jobs also. But diagnostics is just, can we get to answers quickly when something good happens or bad happens, right? And then the last bit is the strategic one, which is, and these can be transformative questions, right? Who do I really compete with on this product? What is that? What is that competitive set doing that I should react to, right? Those are the types of questions that fall under the strategic bucket. Again, operational, diagnostic, and strategic are the three buckets. Josh, I'm happy to get very specific on questions in each of the buckets.
Yes,
but I'll let you lead that. But I just want to go back.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead and finish that up.
I just want to go back and say, I think the reaction to this is too much data, it's daunting, is normal. I again strongly recommend that's not where you need to start. You just start from, what do you want to know, or what is painful today in the business to monitor? Let's get that list. And then we can go back and say, where can we find these answers? Some answers come from Amazon Marketing Cloud. Some answers can come from the stream data. But that roadmap is perhaps the most critical thing in executing a data strategy.
Yeah, I love that you really simplified things to say, hey, there is a lot of data out there. Don't get overwhelmed by the data. Start with the basics. What questions are you trying to answer? So here's what I would love to do. And yes, I do want to get specific with these questions, but the more questions you can give, or like ideas that you can give to our sellers to say, like, these are the type of questions you could or should be considering asking to be able to find the answers in the data, and maybe even work in some case studies to say, like, because we found the answer to X, Y, and Z, we now were able to make this action that we were able to grow sales or recover sales, whatever it may be.
Makes sense. So I'm happy to dive into each of the buckets, right? The operational bucket is, I'll start very simple, like product level, ACOS and TACOS. I'm assuming your audience is familiar with the ACOS and TACOS definitions. But just basically bringing organic sales and ad sales all together and have a clear visibility of ACOS, TACOS, right? Here's why this is important. You see many times where you could be spending up on ads on products. ACOS stays flat, maybe even looks better, but your top line is hurting, right? Or top line is flat. So just having a clear, consistent view at an individual product level of ACOS, TACOS, advertising, or organic sales in one place, as simple as this sounds, most people don't have it. That's a great example. Right? Another example, right? Profitability is a fundamental question every seller has. The gap I see all the time is, for example, between advertising and profitability. It is especially true if you are a seller where you have a team managing ads. It could be an internal team or an agency that is a little bit disconnected from the operational aspect of the business. Your item level profitability does not align with your ad spend, right? So unless you bring these together in a view, you're not going to know it. So I think profitability by product is another example that you want to track on a very regular basis. So these are all things that just explain what happened, right? Another example I see is like, do you know, I keep going to ad spend because we see a lot of people like a big chunk of time is spent in ads when it comes to growth. So I have a lot of these examples. Tying inventory levels and ad spend. Right? Are you spending money on products that may be low on inventory, or are you spending on products that have enough inventory? Like, why are you doing that? These are questions you can ask if you tied ad metrics and inventory metrics together. I don't know if you've picked up the theme here, which is, look, getting ad metrics by themselves is not hard. You can go to the ad console, you probably are pulling in the data, you have reports. Getting organic stuff is not hard. You could get that from Seller Center. I've always believed that when you bring two data sets together that come from different places, you unlock some magic that otherwise you don't have. So that's where inventory and ads, profitability and ads, organic sales and ads, right? So I hope the theme is clear. So those all fall under the operational bucket to me, right?
Yeah, I think you've, and I just want to double down on that to say how important those questions are to be able to answer. Because I think you made a great example here with, let's say you're running out of stock on a product and it's not going to be back in stock for another week or maybe two, right? Why would you spend more money, right? It's like, hey, our ACOS is great. Let's spend more money. You're only losing more money to go out of stock even faster, right? Those are some of the things that we've made within our own team, because we do kind of like pair the two data sets together. If we know we're going out of stock and we know we're going to have to re-rank this product anyways, when we come back into stock because it's out for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever it is, then that means I should pull back on the ads now. Might as well be profitable. But I also love another thing that you touched on too, is like how often the ad metrics look great. Hey, the ACOS is looking really good and consistent. Tacos, it's fluctuating by a couple percentage points. But if you really look at it, you're just eating into your own organic rankings.
Exactly.
Right? Or your organic sales. But if you pulled back maybe just a little bit on the ads, you see that organic percentage bump back up, and you're like, okay, because I do believe there's some cannibalization that goes on. If you're just constantly advertising, you want that top of search placement, and you're also, ranked in the top 5 organically. You're getting a lot of people that just click that first thing. And here's the thing about Amazon advertising. You ask 100 people about their strategy, you're going to get 100 different answers.
That's right.
So, but at the end of the day, having that as part of your strategy to say, guys, like Amazon is really focused right now to capture more of your money. So there's going to be more ad placements on that page. So you've got to get really good at being able to actually identify and make sure you're making a profit at the profit SKU level, which you mentioned. And I do think that most sellers overlook that. They're not pairing the few data sets together. Srinath, do you have any other examples or maybe case studies in this kind of like operational bucket of insights that you've seen people find and changes that they made to their strategy?
I think the most obvious one is like, this happens a lot when you, again, I said this before, which is you've got a separation of ad execution and retail oversight. Especially like, let's say you have an agency running your ads, and they're doing their thing and for the right reasons, optimizing on ACOS or whatever the metric is. The thing is, every time, and I have a number of examples of this, but every time you brought a lens of profitability into the product. In fact, what I recommend actually is there's ACOS and there's ROAS, right? Return on ad spend. It'll be super important to have a profit on ad spend metric, right? It has altered the level of spend you will allocate to products. And this has happened multiple times, right? So that, in multiple cases, you have certain set of products on which ad spend was allocated, but when you bring the profit lens, that allocation has shifted, right? So that's one example. Inventory is a common one, right? And there is some issues depending on I assume all the audiences is 3P sellers. Is that fair?
Correct. Yep.
Right. So that's less of a challenge. There's enough data sets there where Um, just proactively reallocating dollars to products that are not running out of stock has definitely resulted in, certainly better deployment now, but lesser pain later when you're actually out of stock. So that's another example. Also, right now we are dealing with a specific example where, again, I go back to ad metrics are looking great, but top line is not, right? And when we dug in and looked at numbers, ad performance is up 50-60% at the same ACOS as before. Top line is down 20-30%. And we keep digging further and learn that something shifted about their nodes or categories that they are listed several months back. That probably has hurt their organic volume. But again, in this case, it was bringing BSRs, ad performance, and organic sales together to at least establish, hey, there's a correlation here about something about the categories of products changing, and hence that's impacting your organic sales. But that's only possible when you bring these three together. Otherwise, you won't see it.
Yeah. I think those are great examples. So I know we may jump the gun here a little bit, but before we move into like the diagnostic questions, would be how in the world do you pair all these data sets together then?
Yeah. No, I think so. There is only one way to do it, right? Technically speaking, which is you collect all the data, you organize it well, and you have dashboards or views to sit on top of it, so that as an end consumer, you're looking at it in a beautiful chart, or you have an analyst that can go get the data and analyze in a spreadsheet if they have to. So those three have to happen: collect, organize, and visualize. Okay. Now, we are in the business of having built a product that does those three pieces. This is a plug for ourselves here, but I'm just saying that like technology company like ours is building tech so you don't have to worry about those three. Right? That's what we have done. Because building these things from scratch is not core to your business. You'll spend a lot of time and money. And I've known even agencies as well as some brands that have done that. So I would avoid spending money on doing those three things. I would make sure you partner with someone that solves those three pieces. You focus on the fourth piece, which is what questions matter to you, right? Because if you have that, there is enough service providers or companies, including ourselves, will get the bottom three pieces nailed and help you accelerate the top piece. Even if you have an internal team, analysts or whoever, right? You don't want them focusing on those bottom three pieces, which is collection, better organization. Those can take a lot of investment. So have them work with someone that can get that in order. And by the way, we are at a place where that can be in order within days, right? And I'm talking about like collection, not just from Seller Central, sponsored ads, DSP, Amazon Marketing Cloud, Stream, all that. Pipes are already built. Data is already coming in. There's a couple more things you have to do as a brand. Now you start unlocking insights, right? So I would say don't take that project on.
Yeah.
But focus on rapidly extracting value, which starts with you knowing what questions you want to answer.
Yep. Makes a lot of sense. So I want to go back. I want to double down into IntentWise then a little bit here and ask you the question, like, what type of data are you bringing in? So you're getting Amazon Marketing Cloud. You're getting like, I would imagine the brand reports that you can download through Seller Central and advertising. Are you factoring in organic ranking? Are you also getting a snapshot of the BSR at the category level? Like what all data sets, do you have?
So you're right. There's tons of data. So I break it down into 5 buckets just so that we can wrap our head around this. One is the advertising data, and in that falls sponsored ads and DSP if you're doing DSP ads. Just pulling down all that data, right? 2 is retail data, which is Seller Central data or rapid retail, like hourly data, which is all the retail metrics. And if you use the catalog API, you can get BSRs. You can get price data. So all the retail metrics is the second bucket. The third bucket is what I call shopper insights, which is where from Amazon Marketing Cloud you can start to pull down certain interesting things like, hey, which products drive the most new to brand acquisitions for me? Oh, it turns out it's not the same for all products. Oh, these 10 products drive a lot more new to brand acquisition. So I need to treat them differently. So you can get those types of insights from Amazon Marketing Cloud. The competitive insights, which is like, where am I ranking organically? Who has what badge? That's the other, I call it competitive insights that include yours, but you should know exactly what keywords and what products you have badges on so you can defend them, right? You should know that, right? And how is that changing? So that's the fourth piece. And the last piece is actually things that are specific to you, the seller, right? I'm talking about there's a way you categorize products, right? You may want to know ACOS and TOCOS by those categories, not individual ASINs, right? That mapping only you know. Amazon doesn't know that, right? So that's your data being ingested into this mix. Unit economics, your landed costs or cost data on products, which you need to figure out profitability. That's an input from you.
Yep.
Right. So these 5 things: ads, retail/operations, competitive data, shopper insights from Amazon Marketing Cloud, and the seller's own specific metadata. These 5 have to come together. Now a lot of magic can start to happen. And I go back to those 3 buckets of questions. There's a lot of questions you can start to answer. By the way, collection is one thing. We have built out APIs. We connect to them. We extract them. That's the easy part. What's hard is that those APIs break. There's data quality issues, right? We raise a lot of tickets with Amazon, but you need to be on top of this to maintain data quality high. That's the dirty part of this, right? Very unsexy, but you know this, right? Every other day, like an API upgrade happens, or some report is late, or some new metric has been defined that we don't understand what it is. So there's all this stuff that goes into collecting, right? So that's one component. The other component I'll say is, I go back to there's just data explosion. What the heck do we do? This is where better organization matters. If today you want a single view at an ASIN level that has advertising performance, organic performance, inventory levels, perhaps some review insights, all in one view, like a 360-degree product view, it is extremely painful to construct. Why? Because this data sits in 20, 25, 30 different reports. So we spend a lot of time not just collecting the data and our customers have access to their raw data, but we also better organize into a slightly different e-commerce friendly data model where you'll have a single view by ASIN. You get all these metrics in one place so that your analyst, whether it's yours or ours, when they build this dashboard, they're not touching 20, 30 different tables trying to figure out what is where. It's all in one view. Just build a nice chart, pie chart, bar chart, whatever. And we have a bunch of templates for that. So that data organization, completely underestimated in the space, is very important if you as a business owner wants to get insights very quickly, right? Otherwise, you will have a question. It'll take 3 months for someone to get you an answer. That better organization of data is so critical. And I'll just add one more example for complexity. Now, if you are a seller operating in 5 different marketplaces, right? You're looking at costs. You want all these currencies to be normalized to your dollars, right? To understand what's going on. You need currency conversion data somewhere, right? Well, that's part of our data feed. So that's what I mean by better organization and enrichment of data. Otherwise, slows a lot of things downstream. But yeah, so collection and better organizations. I hope, maybe a long-winded way of answering your question, but I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, it sounds super helpful. I mean, that's I think like the missing crux of all of this is that you need to have something that's collecting the data really well, as you mentioned, and you gave the 5 really core pieces of data you've got to bring in, and then you've got to have something that's visualizing it so that you can extract the insights. And so anyways, thanks for diving down into that. Let's go back into the diagnostic questions then. So give me some specific examples. What are diagnostic questions that I should be asking and trying to find answers to in the data?
Yeah, I mean, I have a funny way to frame this. Let's just say you're operating a seller account. ACOS went up 25% for whatever reason, right? Over the last 1 week. How long do you or your team or your agency partner takes to isolate the reason? I say it should be 15 minutes. Okay. I don't think it is 15 minutes in most places. Where I'm going at this is what I mean by diagnostics. right? When things go wrong, do you have a standard operating procedure to go figure out what may be causing it? Now, it's very difficult to understand exact causality, right? But it is not that difficult to understand correlation. Okay. Hey, maybe you lost a badge that you had before, right? Maybe a competitor is aggressively bidding on your brand term. It's Prime Day, and you're not able to keep your sponsored brand position at the top because somebody is willing to spend $45 a click, and yet and you can't defend it at that. So the point is, whenever a problem happens, so problem, and the problems, the sellers know the problems better than anybody else. Like, hey, my margin sucks. My ACOS has gone through the roof. Whatever those problems are, and I can list a couple that show up a lot. Do you have a standard operating procedure to nail the diagnostics? So I'll take a simple example, right? I go back to the ACOS example. You're spending, let's say, 100 grand a month, and your ACOS just shot up by 25% last week. You should have a process that says, okay, very quickly, okay, I have account level, ACOS is up 25%. Let me break this down by portfolios. What portfolio or what product group is causing this? Or what campaign type is causing it? Or what campaign is causing it? Or what specific products are causing it? What keywords are causing it? Is it a non-brand versus brand problem? So there's about 8 to 9 dimensions with which you want to look at the business and quickly isolate the problem areas. Right? That's what I mean by diagnostics. What went wrong? Why is my specific metric up or down? And then do you have a SOPs in place to diagnose, to troubleshoot that? And so I'd say simple things like when year-over-year growth is hurting, that's why, right? When ACOS is up, why? Let's just start with those 2 questions and ask yourself, do you have a process to get your answers within, I say 15, but let's say 30 minutes? If not, I would say work with your internal team or agency partner to have a process in place to solve this. Otherwise, what happens is you just lose a lot of valuable time. Right? Like, how often, I'm sure you've seen this, Josh, like how often do people sit and like just figure out what the heck is going wrong, and you can't get to at least points of correlation, forget causality. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, I love that. I think those are fantastic examples. And I think, again, being able to even learn when that 25% increase happens to your ACOS, right? Let alone being able to troubleshoot it. Like, you've got to be able to see your metrics on a week over week basis, right? Correct. And that's something that our team, we've spent a lot of time. We actually built out a lot of our tools in Power BI and dashboards to be able to visualize a lot of this. And we look at it on a daily and weekly basis to be able to say, like, how quickly are changes happening?
Yep.
And, if we activate this type of ad campaign, what happens?
Yep.
Right? Good or bad, and make changes accordingly. So I love that.
And you said something interesting here. This is where the first and the second bucket of questions intersect, right? Operational tells you my ACOS is up, but the diagnostic process tells you, at least gets you closer to why. By the way, why is always hard, but you can at least figure out, hey, it's because it's correlated with you spending more money on sponsored brand video last week on these 5 products, right? Whatever the correlation is, right? You want to be able to get to it very quickly. So yep. I would say back to the roadmap, frame the 2 or 3 questions you struggle with all the time, quickly invest in figuring out a diagnostics process that can get you the answer very quickly.
Yeah.
In fact, what we have done in our, I don't want to plug my, so just a quick note, what we have done in our ad product, right? We literally introduced a feature that says what changed. And for this reason, it's funny, like there's a lot of conversation that happens about ad management, right? PPC management. Here's the thing I see. 70 to 75% of PPC management is actually analyzing what happened. It's not even moving the dials, right? So how do you shrink that time? So we introduce this capability where you can say, hey, compare last week over prior week or last week over same week last year. Come back and tell me the things that drove the biggest change, and we assign an impact score and say, hey, here's two portfolios and the 5 products and the 7 keywords you should pay attention to with all the metrics, because that's the algorithm we built. But again, that is an example of why, where we have invested in making diagnostics easy and simple, because we just spend inordinate amount of time in that bucket, and it's not efficient.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And yes, you can go ahead and plug yourself away, because I think you're solving the pain point that entrepreneurs don't want to build that out, right? They don't want to have to think through what are all the questions, how do I correlate this with that? So that's great that you guys, it's not only just like a visualization, like you guys have that, like, hey, you're raising red flags and saying, like, take a look at this.
Yeah. It's especially during the events like Prime Day is over. So I've so many requests I've seen in the system where they've said, like, 2 days this year of Prime Day versus last year. Do the compare. Show me all the changes and what drove the difference, right? So the most frequently used, let's call it, request in the last month is exactly that.
Okay, so here's another question before we get to our third and final competitive strategic questions, which is going to be, are you using AI as part of your guys' software to be able to identify all of that data and insights?
Great question. I think, look, I've lived and breathed this AI stuff for some time in my career. So I just want to clarify the point of view, right? If you look at the software space, there is no PowerPoint or no pitch today that does not have the 2 letters AI, right? And by the way, it has been the case for the last 5-7 years, if you remember, right? Ad management, so any software, right? What has happened is a lot of machine learning techniques, which, like, if you think about regression analysis, right, which has existed for the longest time, where, in any scenario where multiple factors influence an outcome and you have a ton of historic data, you can put it in a machine learning model to let it find the pattern, and now you can let it predict the future, right? So that has existed for a very, very long time. And I mean, simple examples are like weather forecasting. I know it's not perfect, but weather forecasting has been around for the longest time. That's not new, right? So leveraging machine learning in bid management is old. It's table stakes, right? And we've been doing this for a long time, right? What we today refer to AI, when we all say AI, is something that ChatGPT introduced about 20 months ago, which is generative AI. And the simple way for us to, I think, at least the way I articulate the changes, we have had AI and machine learning techniques on numeric data and structured data for a very long time. That's not new at all. What we have not had is that level of sophistication on unstructured data, like text, like images and video. And even that, right? Like, remember, we all are on our mobile phones. We are texting all the time. Notice those auto-suggested keywords. And these days, I rarely type a word. The auto-suggests have gotten better and better and better. That is machine learning and AI getting better at understanding unstructured information like text. So I just want, you asked me a question about AI. I just want to break these two apart and say, look, AI has always existed on numeric data. Yes, we use it in our bid management solution. Yes, we use it in part in assigning an impact score on the what changed analysis. So that's one kind. That's existed. What's new is AI on unstructured data. Because we are talking about data, I'm going to just call out a couple of 2 or 3 use cases where we see AI working beautifully. And by the way, there's just been too much noise and fluff around this. And in fact, there is a individual by the name Amara. There's a law named after him. It's called Amara's law. You can look him up. It says all tech innovations are overestimated in the near term and completely underestimated in the long term. And that's exactly what is happening with generative AI. Too much noise, too much fluff has happened over the 18 months. Now noise has settled down. But I really do think there's like valuable applications of it. For example, today internally for our own business, we take text in live chat of our own software, send it through a generative AI model and ask questions like, hey, which conversation did not go well and why? It'll come back and tell you that. In the absence of Gen AI, we would it's like trash, right? The digital exhaust, we all trash, we don't use it. But Gen AI, I think, is helping us understand. And if you're a seller, right? If you take calls from customers for support, if you have live chats, if you have review content, any unstructured content, Gen AI can unlock insights that you could otherwise, you were just throwing it away before, right? So sorry.
I love that. We could dive into that whole AI rabbit hole, and I'd be
Totally.
very interested to get your predictions on the future there. But let's bring it home here, going back to our strategic questions now.
Yeah.
That's kind of our final third bucket. Give me some specific examples of strategic questions we should be finding answers to in the data.
So the most basic question, and I see this all the time, most brands and sellers have a hard time understanding who their competition is, right? Because of the scale. Like if I'm selling 500 products, who is your competition? It's at the product level. It's not at a brand level. It's at the product level. So I think simple question, who do I really compete with? Let's start there, right? Once you know that, let's bring it back to operational tracking on those. I want to see my BSR against those 7 products. I want to see badging. I want to see share of voice on ads on those products, just so I understand how am I doing relative to those guys, right? That's an example. Another strategic example, understanding repeat purchase behavior. Or I go back to Prime Day. You did Prime Day deals. You want to be able to track the cohort of users that bought your products and deals on Prime Day, and watch what they do. Do they come back and buy again? Has it been worth it for you? Right. That's another example of strategic question. By the way, you couldn't answer this without Amazon Marketing Cloud, but because Amazon Marketing Cloud is there, you could actually answer this. You could literally create a pool of people that bought your deal products on Prime Day and watch what they do in terms of purchase behavior over the next 12 months. Right. So again, and this ties into repeat purchase behavior, lifetime value. Bring it back to subscribe and save is another situation where you can actually understand, what is really happening. Are enough people opting in? How many customers do you have that have not opted into subscribe and save? Right. So these fall under these strategic bucket, where ultimately what you're trying to do is think about it from an end customer's lens and differentiate from competition, expand share of wallet on that customer. So to me, those are examples of questions that fall under the strategic bucket.
Yeah, I love that. And I think especially if you have a consumable product where there is going to be repeat purchases, I think what you just touched on is extremely valuable, because how in the world, like, for example, I know that for most Shopify stores that are, if you're selling like a supplement or some type of subscription, their whole premise is I'm going to go in the red generating ads, right? I've got all these ads. I might be paying $100 customer acquisition cost, but I break even after 2 months because of the subscription.
Yep.
That's the entire model. And then they just have to bridge the gap between outlaying the cash between today and 2 months from now when I break even. And this has been a long established process in the D2C game, but this is fairly new in the Amazon game because we now have access to this data. And so I would just double down on, like, anybody that has anything that's consumable, subscribe and save, like repeat purchases. Like, if you're not doing this, I promise you are at a massive disadvantage, because sellers like myself, or those that have this understanding, they're going to be willing to go in the red for a month or two, knowing that, like, I'm just gobbling up more and more market share. And this snowball is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger over time. I'm buying the customers. I'm willing to go at a loss during Prime Day because it leads to a massive increase in the number of subscribe and saves. It's not profitable up front, but it is 3 months down the road. So I think that's so important.
100%. And I would just, again, to frame this very simply, I would just ask the question, do you track retention performance? If you don't, let's start that process. We don't have to overcomplicate it. Let's start with some very simple questions. What is repeat purchase behavior? What is my lifetime value? Now, people on Seller Central, there are some FBA reports that have anonymized buyer IDs with which you can get to some understanding of lifetime value and repeat purchase behavior. Problem with that data set is there is no connection with ads. You have no idea what's coming from ads versus not in that data set. It's still useful, gets you started. Amazon Marketing Cloud, on the other hand, can pull those two pieces together, and you can start to see the impact of ads on those metrics also. So, on the strategic bucket, like continuing to build your muscle around measuring retention performance is going to be so crucial. And to your point, it drives so many upfront decisions. What ACOS goal do you set on those products, right? Like, how would you answer that without knowing this?
Yeah.
So,
love this. This has been a fantastic conversation, Srinath. As we wrap up, I love to leave the audience with 3 actionable takeaways from every episode. Here are the 3 that I noted, but you let me know if I'm missing anything. So action item number 1 is have a roadmap of questions that you want to be asking or finding answers to in the data. I think it is so important for those that have PPC agencies that are operating in their own silo. They don't know what your inventory looks like. They don't know what your profitability looks like for the business. And they also probably aren't tracking your organic ranking, BSR, competitive insights. And so it is extremely important for you to have a roadmap to say, what are the questions I need to have answered, and how am I going to get those questions answered? So action item number 1 is just simply having a roadmap, 10 questions that you want to find answers to. Then action item number 2 is if you don't have a way to visualize all of the data to see how your inventory stacks up with your ad performance, to see how it stacks up with your organic rankings and competitive insights and profitability, you need to leverage a tool, whether it's something you build internally because you're a data wizard and can build out tables and SQL and all that stuff on Power BI, or you leverage a tool such as IntentWise that's able to help get to that level of data.
Yep.
And then last but not least, my third action item is, are you actually leveraging this data? Do you have processes in your business of somebody, even if it's yourself to begin with, that is looking at the data, that is trying to find correlations, and then utilizing that data to then make additional strategic decisions in your business? Because the Amazon is becoming more competitive. That's not news to anybody. But guess what? The people that are going to win over the next 5 to 10 years are going to be the sophisticated brands, period. And so if you're not, and you're just doing the stuff that you're a solo entrepreneur and you were able to make a quick buck and you got to 7 figures back in 2016 and you're just kind of rolling along now, I promise you, if you do not implement these things, you will not be surviving in this new Amazon world, because the purge is in action. And over the next 5 to 10 years, a lot of the small mom pop shops that aren't doing the sophisticated stuff, you ain't going to be making millions of dollars anymore. You'll still make a little bit of money, but it's not going to be millions like it's been today. Srinath, anything else you would add to this?
No, I think you nailed it. I would just add that, like, there's another phenomenon that happens, especially if you're kind of slightly scaled seller and you're trying to scale up further, is you end up working with a bunch of service providers to do a different set of things, right? In the process, what happens is you don't pay attention to owning your own data, right? That is very critical. Like, hey, don't put yourself in a position where, you switch a tool or you change a service provider, you lose data. So that's another caution, I would say. Just make sure you are on a path to own your data all the time, no matter who your service providers are.
Great insights. Srinath, this has been a lot of fun. Here's the last part of our podcast. I ask the final 3 questions. So number 1, what's been the most influential book that you've read and why?
Great question. For me, I mean, I do a reasonable amount of reading. I think the one that has certainly influenced me in this journey as an entrepreneur myself is, I would say, Made to Stick. It's a really tiny short book by Chip and Dan Heath. I'll tell you why it was important, right? It's, I'm a entrepreneur that came from the background of being in the weeds on data and building tech. That's where I came from. I'm not a sales guy. I was not a marketing guy, right? I was none of those things. And so one of the things that book taught me is the importance of messaging. Messaging that resonates with your prospects or shoppers, whoever, or customers, whoever. And they put a framework around how to think about messaging, right? So that's what I really love. It's kind of really changed the way I talk about stuff now. I know I can get a lot better, but I just feel like that was a fundamental shift for me. I would recommend that book for everybody. In fact, I've bought and given that off as gifts to kids and friends, and so many times. Like, I need to become an affiliate for those guys.
That's fantastic. Made to Stick. Great recommendation.
Yeah, tiny book. You'll finish it in an afternoon.
That's awesome. Next question. What is your favorite AI tool? I know you have a lot of opinions on AI and lots of information on AI, but what's your favorite AI tool and how are you using it?
Yeah. I don't know that I have a favorite, but I'll tell you what I use a lot. I use ChatGPT all the time. I use it to do research. I had some Olympics is going on and I was having a debate with friends. So I asked ChatGPT to plot medal tally for the last 50 years by a few countries. And there it is, right? It has become this assistant that it just really, like, I wanted to, in our space, there's a lot of acquisitions. So I wanted to understand, like, top 5 agencies, they're all public companies. I just want to know revenue, EBITDA, multiples of valuation on EBITDA and top line and all that. 4 sentences, this thing came back with a beautiful table and chart. So it's become my research personal assistant.
I love that. And I think, like, using it even more so than Google, right? Shifting that to be, that's your new Google.
Yeah, it is. And it's just, and you can go back and forth, like, oh, I don't like that chart. I change these colors to blue and red. And you can go back and forth. It's really like someone working for you, right? And I also do it for internal purposes. Like, I take a live conversation from my intercom and I want to just know some details. I put it in and say, hey, find these things for me. And it comes back with outputs that are super interesting. So.
I love that. All right. Final question here, Srinath, is who is somebody that you admire or respect the most in the e-commerce space that other people should be following, and why?
Oh, there's a lot of people. But I guess if I'm forced to name one, I would say, I'm a big fan of Rick Watson. I don't know if you follow him, but I think he does. For me, it's very educational. Like, he's in the weeds on performance of companies and earnings calls of the Amazons and the Walmarts, and he breaks this down at a level of detail that, frankly, I can't find in very many other places. So it's like source of education for me. So I would follow him.
That is a great recommendation. This has been an awesome episode. If people want to learn more, they want to follow you, Srinath, learn more about IntentWise, where should they go?
IntentWise.com. I'm very prolific in terms of putting out content that's largely educational on LinkedIn. So just follow me there. Or Srinath at IntentWise.com if you want to message me directly.
Awesome. Well, hey, thank you so much for your time today and jumping on the show.
Well, thank you, Josh. This has been a blast.
Thank you for listening. Visit ecombreakthrough.com for more information. If you've enjoyed today's episode, the best way you can show your appreciation is by clicking the subscribe button and quickly leaving a review. See you again next time.